Welcome again to another episode of the Growth Focus podcast. My name is Gary Lafferty, your host, and this is the podcast where we bring tech leaders from all across the globe to share their insights, their expertise, so that we can all grow within our industry. On this episode, I am super excited to have Dave Hansen from Client Tether, and we're going to be talking all things CRM, AI, old and new, and basically CRMing where no other franchise has ever CRM'd before. So that being said, Dave, can I ask you to introduce yourself, give a little bit about your history, where you started, and how you got to today?
No, thank you. Thanks Gary for having me on the show. I love the premise. Certainly wish I had a show like this to listen to as I was building the business, because having honest feedback about where the struggles are rather than just chest beating all the time is really what people need to listen to. So thanks. So Client Tether, I was actually recruited to run the company from my friend. He's been a serial entrepreneur in the franchising space. My background's always been in sales. I started my first company when I was 5. If we have time, we can go back and tell. That's a funny story. But I've kind of been in sales roles, leading sales teams, and helping to run companies, and starting a few ventures on the side, exiting those, so this was a great opportunity. I just kind of fell into this, and it's a really interesting business. The technology was advanced, but it was undersold, and they didn't have a good product market fit yet. And that's kind of when they brought me to say, hey, help us launch this thing and get it really rolling. And we've kind of had a rocket ship experience in the last 6 years, ever since.
I love that phrase, a rocket ship experience. And as I said, we've certainly seen over the last few years, Dave, a lot of tech companies, a lot of innovation come in, and a lot of exponential growth. But for those who don't know, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But for those who don't know what Client Tether is, and the phrase I used earlier on, do you want to explain? Do you want to explain what Client Tether actually does, and the clients you serve, and the problems that you solve?
Yeah, for sure. And I'll be brief, but Client Tether is a niche CRM and sales automation platform. We service the franchising industry specifically. We could serve a lot more. We'll come back to that, because that was actually one of the first changes that helped us find success, was not trying to do everything for everyone. But we work we're the number one technology provider in all of franchising now, according to Entrepreneur Magazine, and yet we're kind of a scrappy, relatively small, still medium-sized company, and we do sales automation for franchise development. So people who are trying to sell and award franchises, brokers, consultant groups, and also unit operations is actually what we first started with. So an organization that's got multiple locations that needs to have a CRM that can be unified across all of them and automate lead follow-up and proposals and payments and reputation, all that stuff. There's a real gap between tools that are CRMs everywhere else and what's needed in a multi-unit business structure, so it's kind of our sweet spot.
Brilliant. And as you say, when it comes to CRM, one thing that I was absolutely fascinated with, there's lots of CRM systems out there, the good, the bad, the ugly, the cheap, the really expensive, wherever you turn, there's a CRM system for somebody. Right. But what I found really fascinating about what you guys do is bringing the whole automation of sales and operations process together for one particular niche, like the franchisees. What was the gap in the franchise industry that you guys identified that led to this creation of the platform?
Well, I mean, our founder, he's founded a couple of franchise brands before, so he came in fluent in what was needed in the industry. What's ironic, though, is he's not a great networker. He doesn't connect, doesn't go to the conferences unless I force him to go with me. And so he built, in kind of in isolation, this tool that he knew the industry needed, and he had no idea how to market it and sell it. And so, but there's a gap. There's a real big gap in the space around parent-child data management across tools. Franchising is unique. Like, each unit sometimes legally has to have its own data set, and yet generally speaking, CRM world stuff, it's all one big enterprise box. And so you have to try to, with baling wire and duct tape, make the data sort of kind of emulate a parent-child data structure, but they don't do it naturally. That's an out-of-the-box thing that we designed and built, and I don't think he realized the genius behind what he built, because it was underserved and undersold when I got to the company.
Yeah, I totally see that. And I'm glad you've touched on that. And I'll do it later, but I might as well do it now. Data privacy. Data privacy is such an ongoing concern. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. The more quicker that tech grows, it just seems that people's data is getting breached almost on a daily basis. So how does your company address these data security issues, especially considering that sensitive information that some franchisees and franchisors could hold?
It's a great question. You know, data security is always a top priority is for groups like us because we're housing other people's data. It's really sensitive to them and their client relationships. So it's kind of like taking a data security problem and then magnifying it about 50x. Like that's kind of what we have to focus on. So, I mean, it's just a revolving set of tools. Like you've got to continue to evolve to stay ahead of the bad guys that are trying to crack into systems. We're blessed that we've never had a breach. Everyone's had data incidents. We've had a couple of incidents where people have tried to get in and they've gotten stuck and just vandalized essentially the back end of the tool and done little things. But we've been really blessed and fortunate that we built up the right safeguards so they couldn't get into the database.
Yeah, you have to not be breached at all, especially when you're dealing with such a broad, broad field of people's information. I think it's an absolute fantastic. Tip my hat to you there, Dave, because that really is quite a feat.
Yeah, well, I remember when we had a data security incident where some information that had been found as we were migrating into AWS years ago, and we were just fortunate that it was nothing risky. It was just some basic information. It was mostly public domain stuff. But I remember talking to an attorney about it because we were like, "What do we do?" And he's like, "Look, like a week later, SAP had 9 billion records stolen or something crazy," and I was like, "You know what? I got to put it into perspective, right? Like everyone's going to have data incidents. Everyone really will. Any technology platform, whether it's some high school kid screwing around or it's a legitimate agency trying to break in and hold things ransom, whatever the case may be, it really helped us mature quickly to have a plan, and so and also helped us evaluate how are we managing password protection and user access and segmentation of technology assets and all those things that you end up doing. And if you hire a CISO up front, like a Chief Information Security Officer, they already know this stuff because they've been through a data incident before. It's how they became so good at what they do. So it's not that it's excusable and okay. Like that's not the message, but it's not the end of the world, and you'll always make sure you're growing from it and evolving from it, and then you'll get yourself into a position where you're not the easiest target, and so they have to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's extremely important for people to understand. So I speak to a lot of people in cybersecurity, and they'll be the first to admit they're always kind of one step behind, but they're learning on a daily basis because every time something's new in, they make sure they're on the back foot, they're on the coattails to make sure it doesn't happen to their clients. So yeah, you're absolutely right there. I want to take a slight detour and move away from data privacy and talk about sales and talk about lead conversion rates, because I know that's something very, very, very top of your priorities as a company. You've got your CRM can help lead conversion rates up to 250, 300%. Could you walk us through a success story where Client Tether has significantly improved a franchise lead conversion rates, and how did the system help them do that?
Yeah, we've only got a half an hour, so I'll try to limit this, right? So this is something I love. So I've been in sales forever. So like my first company at 5, I was selling door to door. So I've always just kind of been a student of sales. What I've seen without fail, any organization I've ever worked in, or I've done a lot of consulting, is that there are 3 big buckets that most organizations struggle with, and this is what causes their sales to be flat and their revenue and P&L not to look the way it should look. And it's the initial lead conversion is the biggest bucket. If they can solve that problem, they got stuff coming in. Hopefully, right? If you're early stage, maybe it's not as much as you want, but that just means it's more important that you have a high conversion rate. But then after that point, it's whatever your service, there's usually a bid or a quote process. They usually have a big fall off or drop off there because they're so busy getting quotes out the door, they don't follow up on what they quoted initially. And then on the back end, it's post-service delivery. How do I retain, upsell, resell, get referrals, get reviews? Like there's that part of the process. And again, most people are doing things that require human effort to make all 3 of these buckets work. So we're really passionate about all 3, but the front end has the biggest impact. So I had a client. They're a 40-year-old brand. They've been doing franchise sales for 40 plus years. Very respectable brand, and they had been using an industry tool that's kind of dated and not that great. They have good tools on the back end, but their front end CRM it's kind of blah. And so I finally convinced them to roll over to us. They were using us for all their units already, and without changing their marketing budget, without changing their personnel, just by rolling out our system that automates lead follow-up. So leads come in email and text, and then it also calls the sales rep. we're the only platform in the world that can do that. So I guess there's chest beating for you, but like so, and by rolling out a process that systematized the effective follow-up process, because it's changed, by the way. If you've been in sales for a while, we used to think, call them first, get on that phone, pound the phones. False. It's inverted now. You need to text them first and then call them. So we stay abreast of that, but we helped them deploy it. And within 14 months, they had increased their franchise sales rate by 300%. That's massive. I mean, in franchise sales with larger organizations, if they get a 30% increase, they would be high-fiving and taking vacations, right?
Yeah.
And so this was a massive win. And with a great client, they're really good friends of mine too. And it just goes to show that the process and systematizing the process is what makes people win. You also have to have a good message and a good brand and good people that can have good convos, right? They've got a good sales guy, a good sales team. They're talented, but even with the talent, without having a tool that could create scale for their talent, they couldn't move as many as they do now.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when we talk about percentages, especially in tech, it kind of gets glossed over. I mean, 300%. In revenue sales increase is, like you say, it's a massive number. It really is a huge number, and it shouldn't be taken lightly because, to find one system that can help you do that, usually it's a combination, like you say, if you get 20, 30, 40%, you have high-fiving, you're celebrating with champagne, you've got the choppers out, everything's going well, right? But,
right.
Yeah, but to get 300% increase in that by doing the right processes in place, and making sure that it works is an absolutely outstanding. And I'm glad I managed to talk to you about that, because when I saw that stat, I thought, no, I've got to talk to him about that. But what I want to talk about now is reverse that back and go back to when you were 5. All right, all right, because we've heard about the guys, we started selling when we were in our teens, but I've got to admit, Dave, you're the first person I've met that said I started when I was 5. Okay.
Oh, man.
Let's tell us a little bit about that.
So I mean, I'm a big baseball fan. When I was young, I played I played all through high school. I played baseball, but when I was little, baseball cards were really cool, and my family didn't have much money, so I wanted some money so I could go buy baseball cards. So I was in half-day kindergarten. I'd come home in the morning. My mom had just had my little sister, I think, her little brother. She was really tired, so she wanted me to take a nap with her. So I'd wait for her to fall asleep, and I'd get up, and then I'd go do whatever I wanted. So I had this plan. I made paper trinkets. I found some whistles in the house, and I went door to door when she fell asleep one day to talk to all of her neighbor friends and sell them whistles and paper trinkets. But here's the thing, and this is not a made-up story. I swear to you. I got probably 7 or 8 doors down, and my friend Jeremy's mom said, "Come on in, Davey. Let's, why don't you play with Jeremy?" And she calls my mother. She's like, "Do you know what your son's doing right now?" She's like, "I think he's downstairs playing." She's like, "He's not downstairs playing." And what I had thought were whistles were actually my mother's tampons. So I had unwrapped her tampons, and I was going door to door because I thought they looked like blow pops, and I was trying to sell her tampons to all of her neighbors. So needless to say, I didn't make a lot of money that day, and I've never had a tougher sales job in my life.
Wow, what a story that is. The innocence of children, the innocence of babes. That's amazing. But that's got to have shown some kind of tenacity and resilience that you've obviously taken through your whole career to where you are today, starting the young and learning from that, looking door to door. Isn't it funny that we always say, especially when we're growing a company or growing a sales department, we said if adults could just get out of their own way and pretend they were children again, it would take away a lot of the fear, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I still kind of cling to this idea of professional playfulness. Like, I read an article years ago from oh my gosh, Robin Williams, just a brilliant tortured genius, right? Like, everyone loved Robin Williams. He seemed so happy and fun, but he was struggling with depression. And this article was all about how he used drug abuse and things. And he talked about how he would play, and when he played, that helped his brain to heal, and he could just be fun and feel authentic. And so, and not that I goof off all the time. Sometimes I get in my serious mode, but I just feel like it's important. It's an important part of building a brand and a business and a team. You can't be serious all the time. You also can't screw off all the time. So there's a balance there. But I agree. Play is important to humans.
Yeah, and I'm glad we brought this one up. And I know it's a segue from certainly where I intended to go with this, but we'll get back on track later, because I think this playful, this purposeful playfulness is really important. And especially as I'm talking to a lot of founders and CEOs and VPs of sales and etc. and CEOs, there is this big focus on, I've got to do everything right. I can't put a foot wrong. I'm growing the company. I'm the one that's leading the ship. And if they see me goof off and they see me relax, does that mean my team will then take their foot off the gas and start playing around and stuff like that? But you do need to have that probably lightness to your daily attitude. So let's talk about building a team. We all know that it doesn't matter if it's a tech team, whether it's a client services team, whether it's a sales team or a marketing team, trying to attract and retain good team members. It's just getting harder and harder and harder as the years goes on. I would love you to share some of your insights into attracting a team, and once you've got attracting a great team, how do you retain them? How do you make sure that they're loyal to the brand, they're loyal to the mission, and they're loyal to themselves moving forward?
Yeah, those are three good categories: themselves, the brand, and the mission, right? Well, it's hard to attract somebody to something that's not, and this sounds dumb, like a circular statement, that's attractive, right? So there has to be something about what you do that appeals to the person. And I will say this, the younger generation, they will work their guts out if they're passionate about the cause, right? Yeah. And so people like to undervalue the Gen Zs and the millennials, but they're really passionate and purpose-driven people in a lot of ways. And so if you can help them find passion behind the what you're doing, that's really, I think that helps a lot with the younger group. But I'll share just some insights that I've got. And I wish I could say I'm a rock star of this. Like I will say the last few hires we've had have all been really good, but we made a lot of mistakes too. Like I've hired people that were just like, I liked them and they were the wrong person for the role. Like part of it is I've coached a lot of competitive teams. I coached high school baseball, helped coach my own travel ball team. I think about team building a lot like building a baseball team. The first year that I started my travel ball team was kind of an accident. Like the league we're going to play in canceled, so I had to scramble and pull a team together, and then it became this kind of bad news bear program. As anyone who could play or who wanted to was on the team. But what I needed to do to build a competitive team that attracted players was we needed to work through the team members that weren't that great, and I developed them. I invested a lot of time to develop the people that weren't on par. And then the people that I worked really hard with and they just couldn't get it, they selected themselves out. Actually, they didn't want to play against. They could see they weren't going to be at the level they needed to be. In business, it's very much the same. Like if you invest heavily, let's say a young salesperson, and you're training them, you're doing ride-alongs, that you have them shadow you and see how you do things, and then but they've got clear KPIs and clear objectives, and they can see that even with your energy and coaching and systems and processes and everything they need to help them be successful, they're a bad fit. Those are some of the easiest conversations I've ever had that when somebody needed to part a team, because I've even had people say, Dave, you probably should have had me go about 90 days ago or 60 days ago. That's my mistake as a leader. But they knew very clearly, and I didn't have to kick them out the door. And frankly, I keep in touch with most of them. Like, so they're still my friends, but they just don't work for me anymore because they weren't the right player for that role on the bus, right? Not everyone plays shortstop. I need a catcher and a first baseman too. So that's kind of how I like to approach team building. But if you build that team, back to the baseball team, like second year, we got a lot better. We actually had over 50% team that year, and we had a lot of success and fun. And then that attracted more players. So part of it is leveling up who you got, because when you start and you're scrambling and it's startup mode, like man, you just pray you can get anyone to trust you enough to work with you. But then once you start to build and groom and develop that team, then it starts to become more attractive to other people, and then you can attract talent. The last few people we've brought onto the team, they're in industry, they're talented people, they're really capable. I'm really proud of them, and those hires came from us having a culture and a company that became attractive to the industry.
No, I totally see what you came from there, and again, there were so many nuggets in there that I'm going to try and scramble back to it and reiterate, because I think when you're used to it, you just spiel it off and this is what we do and da. But for those people who are listening, thinking, hold on, that was a really good point there. How do I do it? So I'm going to try and break it down for you. The first one I want to talk about is the younger generation. I think you're absolutely right. They've had a lot of bad press, and sometimes there's a crowd that deserve that. But generally, if you can find the right ones who can share that passion, if they know what they're doing and why they're actually doing it, then they are your loyalist team members. I mean, I remember I always used to get the early 20s people, whether it would be boys or girls, I always get the early 20s, because if you can really lay out that vision, the mission, and how they can be part of that, that is what they latch onto. And it's not the work, it's not the salary, it's not the hours that they're coming in for. It's they want to be part of that mission. They want to be part. And I, especially over the last few years, where human interaction has diminished dramatically post-COVID, during COVID and things, just to be within a team that is rowing in the same direction.
Right.
And at the same beat and the same, and going into the same destination, that's what drags them on. So I think that's the very first thing that we've got to look at. Don't ignore the youngest. The young ones there can really be a powerful part of your team.
Right.
And obviously, like you said, there are times we've got to let people go. They are the wrong part, the wrong place at the wrong time. They're the right person, they're just at the wrong place at the wrong time. They might fit later on, but they just don't fit right now. And one of the biggest mistakes we can make is to hold on to them and think they'll grow into that position, or the position will grow into them, and it doesn't work that way.
Never. No.
But like you said, they're still your friends now because you let them go. They appreciate it. They've gone on and found the place they're meant to be at, and now they can thrive. And that's one of the best things I think that you can actually do with teams. So thanks for sharing that with us, because I think that's really, really important from that. So from growing and things like that, you mentioned culture, values. You had company, that they're buying into that as well, which is all part and parcel of the company mission from that. Could you share some of those values that you hold dear as a company? And perhaps some of us could probably learn a little bit about having some values as opposed to just a mission.
Yeah, so I'll share this. This idea of value statements, for a long time, I personally was pretty cynical about them because I only saw the lame side of them. Like, we're like everyone's values were trustworthy, loyal. It almost sounded like the Boy Scout oath. It's like yeah, whatever. Like. You guys just got caught in the Enron scandal, like trustworthy, transparent bullcrap. Like that's how I always felt about core values. Yeah. And we went through this process, EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, if you're familiar with that. If you're not, guys, I'll just share this, like quick plug, go check it out. There are tons of free resources, but you need to systematize the way you operate your business and your business planning, your business goals, your business strategy. We found that we got the books, we read them, we implemented on our own. It's been good. I bet we're probably 75% implemented. So I'm sure I'll get a bunch of spam calls from implementers after this goes live, but it's okay. Like it helped us with the structure, so we approached the core values the right way, and we did it bottom up. Like we actually talked to the team and did a survey with the team and gathered up, did some word maps, and realized that there were clusters that aligned with almost everybody in the organization, which made me really happy because they also aligned with what I was trying to build with our executive team, right? That and I'll just share a couple of them with you. And I always tell people, even in interviews, I'll share these in our interview process with people because I want them to know, like, if this isn't you, then this isn't you. Like you're not welcome here if you're not going to live by the standard. Even if you're a complete rock star, go be a complete rock star somewhere else because you're not going to fit real well.
Yeah.
And so one of the ones is we partner with our clients. So we listen to them. I bet 50+% of our development comes from ideas and innovation and questions and needs from our clients, right? We also try to support them. Our goal is if they're growing, then we're growing. So we're trying to do whatever we need to do to help them grow. And sometimes that means I do something that has nothing to do with my day job, right? I'll introduce them to a partner. I'll bring in somebody on a call that's not in my company to help them fix a marketing problem that's upstream of them getting the leads they need to be successful with my tech platform, right? So we go above and beyond that way. Another one is we win as a team. Now that sounds cliche, but I always tell people it's not the bold statement, it's the text underneath it that matters. But we have to work together as a team. We have to work hard. That's just part of winning in a business. You see these rock star CEOs that everybody wants to be, and like, oh, he's just like cruising around the world and he's like, doing cool like Red Bull type stuff. I'm like, that's because he's retired now.
Yeah.
That's 10 years after the fact, right? So now he's telling his story and living in the rears. But as you're growing a business, nobody's sitting on their haunches. Nobody's taking 4-hour lunch breaks. Like that's just not how it works.
No, exactly right. And you're rocks and pebbles and 90-day plans and sprints and all that. All great resources for growing a business and using a team. And again, I love what you said there. It's not just for the company whole. You can break them into executive teams, into leadership teams, into sales teams, into marketing teams, and you can break those into teams. So again, I'm not plugging it, I'm just saying if you haven't looked into it, look into the EOS because it's a really good way to focus on what you want out of a company and then bring the company on board to make sure we move towards that. So that was an absolute great way to talk about that. So from moving from people we got to talk about AI.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
From real people to AI. I said you can't have a tech conversation or a podcast episode or a conference without somebody going on about AI, the good, the bad, and the indifferent. So my question to you, Dave, when it comes to AI, as AI and machine learning is advancing and continuously advancing, all right, almost to the point now where a lot of people I speak to are trying to catch up. Because no sooner have they just grasped what it is, it's moved on again, right? It's like a continuously moving wheel. How do you see technologies enhancing Client Tether's capabilities in the future?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. AI, it feels like back when cameras were new and like everything started getting a camera in it, like that pen had a camera in it, these glasses have a camera in it, and now everything's got AI in it. A lot of it's not real AI, it's just intelligent programming. AI's been around forever. I grew up in the language industry before I came here, and we were developing, not me personally, but the industry, we were developing the NLP and all the standards and the care for machine learning. That's really where it took off. Nobody even knows what IBM Watson is in anymore, but like then Blue, and then like, but we were working with the early model stuff, the statistical, the AI models that were being built. So there's my feather in my cap. I've been around it forever. I mean, like 15 years, guys. This is not new. I know a guy's been using AI in marketing for like 12 years now. Where a lot of people are like, 12 months ago we started using AI. I'm like, that's cute. But so AI has a place. AI has a place but AI is still not great to be applied in broad swaths. The tighter that you program the AI to a specific task, the better it performs. For example, if I want to get a bot, and I'll share a few examples of where I'm seeing AI fitting into our roadmap and how we're using it. We've had AI chat tools and AI text engagement tools that we've been using for years with our platform, but not to replace the human side of things necessarily, but to augment the human. That's what AI is best at. And you have to remember that. AI is not going to be great at contextualized, nuanced conversation management. It's why a lot of people are trying to use like Lumen or other people are trying to like throw AI into texting and be like, look what it does. Yeah. Really, really good at scheduling appointments. But when you get to like the third and fourth layer of that conversation, it gets freaky weird. And people know, like in texting, it's a personal medium. They're like, is this guy drinking? Like, what's happening here? And I talked to someone about this yesterday. Like, we threw away XYZ tool that seemed really cool, but because it was asking, the consumer was saying, hey, I've got a question about this, and then the AI was like, do you want to have a meeting on Tuesday? And this is an expensive, well-trained AI, but it gets out of its depth, and they start to guess, and then the hallucinations take over, and it's bad. Yeah. So niche, narrow use cases. I've got some really cool partners that are doing some great things with AI calling. It's getting good enough now that that's something we're going to experiment with and then probably bolt into the platform. AI for initial engagement, content development. That's old school but really helpful. So it's really about determining where do you have human capital that's being spent on things that aren't the best thing for human capital to be spent on. That's how you should be thinking about AI. That's how I feel about it. And so you find things like, content generation. You can't replace content writing with AI, but you can get the first draft done with AI and then have humans review it and then make sure it's solid. That eliminates 80% of the human effort waste. Now they can focus on fine-tuning messaging, and now they're getting 5x done because of AI, right? So it's a human enablement tool in the sales process. Powerful. You can do lead scoring with it. You can do analytics with it. It's great at those things, but be cautious. My word of caution for a guy who runs a sales automation and engagement company, you got to be cautious about how broad you try to apply it so you don't tick off your customers.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And it comes back to the master and the slave. It comes back to that. AI, people freak out. If you're not careful, it's going to take over your job. It's going to do this and it's going to do that.
No.
I don't know where this poppycock from really, because it isn't true.
Right.
You've still got to control as human. Well, you can let it take control, but that's down to you. If you want to let it take control, that's your issue. But it's there to be mastered. It's there to be controlled, and it's there to be utilized, like you said, for human efficiency. It's there to make stuff where you don't have to have a human take 5 times as long to do it. Let them do that stuff, but still be managed. Like anything else, it's got to be managed. So I'm glad we talked about that. And as you said, for someone who runs that type of company, it's great, but within its reasons. Let's keep it within its box. It is a tool, and let's utilize it as a tool rather than let it take it over. So really, really good points there. I think I've got it as we move to the tail end of this. You just mentioned that word. You mentioned it at the beginning, you mentioned it right now, and I just want to see if we can wrap up something close to this, is the word niche. We mentioned at the very beginning how Client Tether decided, we could help all and everybody because it's a great system, but we chose the franchise route. We chose the franchise need. We chose to go deep on that. Do you want to share some insights on niche, going deep rather than broad?
Well, there are niches, there are riches and niches, right? That old adage. We have a platform, guys. CRM, they can be pretty ubiquitous. You can use them all over. When I first got here, we had dentists and attorneys and doctors and chiropractors and franchises and other people. We had all sorts of people using our platform. And as I started to look at the way that our client, and this is true, like anybody who's doing software, SaaS, you're trying to find product market fit, right? So you'll have the same, I hope you're listening, because this will be the same process for you. The faster you can iterate, the faster you'll get into where you're getting traction. But what I noticed is we had clients that were generating solid revenue, they were consistent, the software was sticky, we didn't have a lot of churn, they were paying us a little bit more on average. And so I started to look at those clients and say, well, what's different? And I realized, they're all in franchising. And then I looked at it, I was like, well, why are we so sticky there? And I was like, oh, geez, like we have a very unique offering, because I knew CRM, well, I've been a Salesforce admin, I've stood up Microsoft Dynamics, I've been in Siebel and Goldmine and blah, blah, blah. I've been in tons of CRMs. And so as I started to look at it, I was like, oh, wow, like we genuinely have something that's architecturally unique for a multi-unit business structure that just plain doesn't exist. And on top of that, we have the best sales automation system that I've ever seen. So I was like, I know where we need to focus. And I talked to the executive team and everyone's like, that sounds great. So I can't say it was like just me, like it was the team making this decision. And it just as a plug, like you have to rely on the team. And I struggle sometimes with that because I like to just run. Every good founder, CEO is going to have that same tendency, but you have to make sure you get the insights from everybody else. Go slow enough to be smooth so you can then go fast. And so that's what we found, that unique product market fit. And there's a funny story, if we've got a moment, that
sure.
we started just working only in franchising, went to just the franchise industry shows. We did all of our prospecting and hunting with franchises and started to find that people were very happy with the results, and we'd get referrals and found partners in the industry that loved what we were doing and needed to introduce us to their clients who had problems because they'd rolled out a Salesforce or a HubSpot or a Zoho or a whatever, Sugar, and they just weren't designed for franchising. They're having all sorts of problems. Well, then fast forward about 5 years in, or not 5 years in, about 5 years ago, I had a person call me and say, hey, Dave, and I was new to franchising at that point, just months in. She's like, can I use this for FranDev? And I was like, Janice, what's FranDev? I don't even know what that word means. And she told me, I just listened, and then I said, well, how do you do it? And then she showed me this convoluted mess of like, she had a Pipedrive and MyEmma and like a texting tool, and like, there's like 5 things cobbled together in one. I was like, well, this is how I do it. And she told me that I was an idiot. She's like, you are an idiot. This is the best FranDev tool I've ever seen, and you're not even selling it as one. And so I said, we can fix that tonight at midnight, right? So we did. We pivoted around that, and now we're the #1 fastest growing FranDev tool in this industry, and it's all because we listened to someone who had a tangential need, and so now we have kind of a split business model where we do both, but we're the only platform that does both well. But only because we listened to the marketplace too.
Yeah, and I think that's a tremendous piece of advice for anyone who's watching or anyone who's listening is that if you listen to others and don't be so dogmatic, you may learn something that could really take you on another path. And there's nothing wrong in business to pivot. You don't have to stick to what you were doing if there is another way. But if you're not listening, you've only got it in your head. And if it's in your head, you don't have all the information, and therefore you're going to convince yourself this is the right path, and where it might not necessarily be the right path. And for somebody who, in my industry, where I grew from that was I always looked at outside of my industry and thought, what could I bring in? What can I bring in from other industries that I could use for this to grow? That's not necessarily being used. So yeah, with the amalgamation of both there, Dave, very, very powerful stuff. Thanks for sharing that with us. So listen, as we draw to the end, I always love to ask a loaded question, all right, for my guests. It's a loaded question at the end. Sometimes it's I've got the answer, and sometimes it's I don't know. But it's one of those things. You've had a very, very, very you've had a great career convoluted with different things, utilizing different tools, different industries, with your sports personal as well, and doing your coaching and stuff like that. So I'm going to flip it all the way around now, and if you had to give one piece of advice to your younger self, to little Dave, maybe a little bit older than 5-year-old Dave, but for younger Dave, maybe somebody who's just getting into their career, can't really quite find the traction that they really want, or wondering, will this ever end? What would that piece of advice be?
A tiny bit of backstory about me. I grew up kind of poor Illinois farm boy, and I never really felt like I've always felt like an imposter in the room. Even as like a CEO of a growing company, top-rated technology stack in franchising, I still sometimes like struggle with this idea of like, am I worthy to be here? So my feedback to my younger self, and hopefully to anyone listening that struggles with the same thing, is you're already here. Like you're here, and you wouldn't be here if you weren't capable of being here. Now, sure, maybe you're not a Richard Branson, right? That's okay. There's one Richard Branson in the world, but there's one Dave Hansen in the world too. And I would have wanted my earlier self to know that you're worthy to sit across the table from any CEO in the universe. You're capable of having an intelligent conversation with any executive at any company in the world. And I wish that I would have felt that and believed it sooner in my life. It would have been a game changer. But I've also got this like stubborn like grit within me where I'm just like, I don't care, I'm going to figure it out. But I always approached things when I was younger of like feeling a little inferior to other people. And I think it's fairly common, but also something that people need to address. Like it's okay. You're here. Remember that you're here right now, and that means you're worthy to be here.
That is a wonderful piece of advice to end on. You've got to where you are. Be proud of where you are. We always tend to be looking forward, and what they say, comparison is the thief of joy. And if you're always comparing yourself to somebody else all the time, you're always going to be disappointed. So you're good where you are, and you just grow from there. You can't go backwards. You can just always go forwards, right? So wherever you are, that's a brilliant piece of and wonderful piece of advice, Dave. Thank you very much for that. So if someone's out here listening, and they're in the franchise industry, they're thinking about franchising their business, and they want to get hold of you, Dave, what's the best place to get hold of you?
I'd say LinkedIn. I mean, I am there quite a bit. I'm not, believe it or not, I'm not a huge fan of like social media, but LinkedIn is the watering hole for my industry. So I spend a fair amount of time there. You can find me there, Dave at ClientTether.com is also my email, so you're welcome to email me if you want to connect or you want to be connected into someone in the space. I'm happy to do that as well. I got a lot of friends now in that space.
Well, I'll make sure I put your LinkedIn URL in the show notes at the bottom so people can get hold of you, Dave. And that being said, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing your insights and your expertise. There's been some great nuggets there. Thank you once again for being with us today, Dave.
Thanks for having me on, Gary.
You're very, very welcome. And for you guys as well, thank you for sharing this journey with us and this interview. And like always, if you've got one piece of advice, one nugget that's just glint, or one BFO, blinding flash to the obvious, that you've got from Dave today, make sure that you do one of four things. Either to like it, make sure you comment on it, or make sure you subscribe. But more importantly, make sure you share. Make sure you share this important knowledge that we're being given by Dave and the other tech leaders on this podcast series, so that we could all grow and we could all succeed in our business and career. So again, until the next episode, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Dave, for being our beautiful and great guest today. And until next time, we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.